Hey, welcome to another edition of John's Hazy Crystal Ball. This one here for May. Anyways, I guess in May for April and prior to this time. Anyways, you can read in the attachment all the statistics from the real estate board with regard to the number of transactions, how active the marketplace is, and all that kind of stuff. I want to focus on some stuff that basically isn't addressed in the media, and I've been able to come across in an interview, a discussion I had with Benjamin Tal, who's the chief economist at the CIBC. So I'm going to be summarizing everything in our conversation. Less about an hour, but I'll do the key points. So it'll take a few minutes. But basically, if you have any questions on this, give us a call, text us, email us, and we'd be glad to discuss our insights or the further minutiae beyond the actual statements I'm going to make. Beyond that as well, we're having 2 weeks today, which is Thursday, May 27th, commencing at 9:30 in the morning Mountain Standard Time, a Zoom call session with Anne-Marie Lurie, who's a chief economist with the Calgary Real Estate Board, where she's going to be reviewing the first 4 months of this year in detail, and the first 27 days of May at that time to see what's happened to the marketplace, give her overview with regard to where immigration's taking place, why the marketplace is where it is, and her forecast as to where we're going into the future. Anyways, back to the point here of my conversation in an interview with Benjamin Tal. Bottom line, interest rates are very low, have been very low for quite a while. However, be prepared, they will be increasing. Now, the Bank of Canada as well as the US Fed have come out and stated that the interest rates will start increasing sometime in 2024. However, we have an inside track here that the Canadian government will actually start increasing interest rates as early as Q4 of 2022. You might say, oh my God, what's happening? Don't want interest rates to increase that early. In fact, that's going to be beneficial because the big thing is, look at what you actually pay as a mortgage. Today, you can get a mortgage, 5-year mortgage for around 1.39%, give or take a little bit. If suddenly you go from 1.39% to it goes up by 2 or 3 basis points, so maybe going up to 2.5% or 3.5% or 4.5%, everything's going to come to a grinding halt. What you want is slow, gradual increases in interest rate. So therefore, if in fact the Bank of Canada will start increasing interest rates as early as Q4 of next year, so that's another 6 quarters from now, what's going to happen is they're going to increase by marginal amounts, 0.15, 0.25%, so that by 2024, we may have increased by 1.5, 2.5, 3%. That's a gradual increase. So it's sort of using the analogy of a frog in water. You can be boiling the water. They jump into a boiling hot cauldron, they'll jump out. But as the water warms around them, they'll be fine. So that's number one. Number two, we have not had inflation for 30 years. Now, as you well know, inflation is an annualized comparison of what the cost of living is given a basket of goods. They don't look at this on a short-term, 1 month or even quarterly basis. As such, if you look at what what inflation was like in the last 3 months or so, it's 0%. However, inflation will be coming back quite rapidly over the next timeline. And whether or not that's going to be year over year, given the next 6 to 12 months, or beyond that, it is on the horizon. So don't fool yourself there. Now, that's my phone because it's reject. Sorry. Anyways, bottom line, be prepared for Q4 2022 as the first rate hike. Now, the big thing is a lot of people forget that the Canadian government realizes that real estate is one of the primary sources of maintaining the economy to be quite strong and quite robust, to maintain its strength. With that, they want to make sure that they do increase interest rates on a gradual basis, as I just mentioned. Okay. Now, if you actually analyze market crashes in any country of any type of product, be it the overall economy or anything else, any rapid rise of pricing, interest rates, or whatever causes a crash. So you want things to be gradual. So there's all that kind of stuff that's supporting evidence. Now, in some cities, and you can argue to a certain degree that in certain price ranges in Calgary, once you reach what I call the resistance level amongst the consumer, they stop buying. Doesn't matter if it's going to be food, vehicles, appliances, or housing. So we may have reached that peak at certain price points or certain types of properties in the Calgary and area marketplace. What's also of interest is that parental giving or donations or I call it gifting to their kids for buying real estate in the last year is up over 30% over what it was previously. So that's a massive increase because previously it was high, but now it's exponentially higher by an increase of another 30%. So there's a lot of parents, basically, I call it new old money. They're giving monies that they have saved up or in the sale of their property to the kids to buy a home. The one thing Benjamin said, which was quite interesting, is that he foresees high-rise properties values, i.e. apartment condominiums, in the medium term are going to be outpacing the price increase versus single-family homes. The logic he has is this. Basically, a lot of single-family homes in many of the major centers across Canada, including Calgary, are basically overpricing themselves to the typical consumer. So therefore, they can't, or many first-time buyers or even move-up buyers can't afford that new house. So they have to look at alternative types of housing. And high-rise apartment-style condos are basically a default option for them. The other thing is, especially in the major centers, where people have sold their inner core properties and moved into smaller towns, etc., and saying, hey, I like this work out a home scenario. Not only is it Benjamin's comment, but also that of a number of senior executives we've spoken to in various companies, that they say, wait a second, people are not going to be working out of their home 5 days a week. We're going to need them to show up at the office at least 2 and maybe even 3 days out of 5. So no longer, yes, they might not have to be here 5 days a week, but for 2 or 3 days, they definitely will have to come into town. So if you moved, let's say Calgary, and you're down now, I don't know, you went up to Caroline, or you decided you wanted to be in Red Deer, or whatever the case is, as opposed to just the bedroom community surrounding Calgary, that's quite a long drive every single day. So what he projects, what Benjamin predicts or forecasts, is that you're going to have a lot of individuals who will stay in the smaller centers that they move to because they like the lifestyle, they like the kids going to school there and whatever other family structure they have. However, they're going to buy a smaller 1, possibly 2-bedroom condominium close to where their offices are downtown and stay there for those few days a week that they're working downtown. They may even do a cost share basis where it's a 2-bedroom unit and shared with another work colleague, and therefore they're sharing the expenses on that. So that's very viable for certain. The other thing as well is, what are the Fed's going to do to reduce the debt they're taking on with all the initiatives that they're introducing here during the pandemic? One of the big things is they introduced this national daycare program, which is going to cost massive amounts of money. And so where are they going to pay all this from? Okay, so bottom line, obviously, they may decide to raise taxes. By the way, there's taxes. Then they may actually take some money from the carbon tax as well, which is not going to not go well with Canadians because carbon tax is supposed to be used to offset our greenhouse emissions, but governments do whatever the heck they want. And lastly, if you remember, not that long ago, we used to pay how much for GST? Oh yeah, 7%. Then the government dropped it to 5%. Everybody rejoiced. Every 1% increase generates somewhere between $7 to $8 billion. That's B billion, not M, dollars of revenue, pure profit, if you wish, for the government. So you can certainly anticipate or expect our GST to increase by at least 1 point, maybe even 2, to give the government some money to offset all these expenses. You might say, wait a second, they can't do that. Other countries aren't doing it. Put the brakes on. Guess what Biden's done in the States and the UK has done? They've implemented all of these taxation strategies. Their taxes have gone up on a personal basis. The increased taxes like equivalent to the GST, as well as they've taken money from other sectors that basically was allotted to go somewhere else to pay down their new initiatives. The big thing as well that did not pass through, at least in this last economic budget that the federal government gave, I guess a couple of weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, I can't recall exactly when. Anyways, there was some rumblings that they're going to start taxing capital gains on personal residences. Well, that's still on the table, but it's on the back burner until they have a what I call a majority government, no parties are ever going to introduce that. However, do expect capital gains on revenue properties to increase. Also on equities, basically any gain you have in the markets, they're going to increase. So right now you pay capital gains on 50% of the gain. Expect that to increase to at least 75 and maybe even 100% of the gain. Remember, there was no capital gains tax before 1971, and then they floated around through the years with regard to what that percentage was. It was 50, 75, 100%, and it went back down to 50%. Expect that to go up to at least 75% in the short term. That's going to generate a fair amount of money for the government as well. The biggest thing as well is that in the last decade, Canadian government has introduced over 50 initiatives, all geared at slowing down the growth and value of real estate, trying to basically allow everybody the opportunity to buy a home. Guess what? Not one of those initiatives has resulted in the what it was designed for. The impact, it did not have the impact that the government intended it to be. Bottom line, the government, excuse me, is looking at how do they solve the demand problem as opposed to the supply problem. If they addressed how to add or increase the supply scenario, then the demand would basically just fill in. Meanwhile, they're trying to stop things from happening, which only puts even more pressure on people wanting to buy properties before so-called D-Day or whatever the case is. So that's there. Now, let's look at immigration for a second. Immigration, basically people, and basically we need immigration to sustain our growth and our economy. So that's something really good that Canada does versus the United States. The United States wants to close their borders down. Canada's always had some great open border policies, which is great for us coast to coast and across all price points. Anyways, a typical immigrant comes in and they rent homes on average for the first 5 years, after which they enter the purchase or the resale marketplaces of real estate. What's interesting is we've opened up the borders already a few months ago, and to immigrants and non-residents, and you're going to see that growing tremendously as well, which should impact very favorably across all economies coast to coast. Lastly, the big question that Benjamin talked about was, should retirees sell? And bottom line, he said one option is stay obviously where you are, enjoy life. But another option he said that somebody should seriously consider is sell your home and rent, and basically capitalize on the equity that you have in the home to give yourself options insofar as what you want to do. Do you want to stay in the city you're in, move to another one where your children are, or let's give yourself flexibility, maybe living in 2 or 3 different cities at the same time, depending on the weather, etc. The big thing, lastly, here is how do today's buyers, how are they going to be able to afford mortgages in 2, 3, 4, 5 years when the mortgages come up and interest rates are invariably going to be considerably higher? Bottom line answer there is quite simple. Fortunately, the Canadian government came up with this thing called a stress test. Now, June 1st of this year is going to increase marginally again, but that's inconsequential. What they did for the last several years is you didn't qualify for the rate that you'd be paying. You actually had to qualify at 4.79%, or a minimum of 2% above your current rate, or 4.79%, whichever was higher. The bottom line is, even if interest rates increased by 2 or even 3 percentage points, today, as I mentioned previously, you can get a 5-year mortgage for 1.39%. Add 3 percentage points to that, that's going to be 4.39, which is still below the threshold that you had to qualify for at 4.79. So the probability of people being under or not being able to afford housing in several years' time, when interest rates invariably will be higher, is very slim to none. So it's not a concern that we have. That may be an issue in the United States because they don't have the same qualifications, but in Canada, that should not be an issue at all. Bottom line, the last thing here is lumber prices. They're increasing like crazy. Why? Primarily because the U.S. housing marketplace is on fire. They need all the lumber that we can supply. They simply don't have enough on their own. They always import from us anyways, but here they're even importing greater amounts. With that, the question gets to be how long that's going to last. Benjamin said he anticipates that to sustain itself for another 3 months. I'm of a little slightly different opinion. I think that's going to go at least another 6 months, possibly even 8 months. But basically, by this time next year, the run on lumber will have subsided. However, the costs of not only lumber, but concrete and all sorts of other supplies that go into housing have all increased. So therefore, the cost of construction for a new home has increased substantially. With that, what happens on resale homes, we carry through the value. So if a new home cost has increased by $100,000, you're going to see in a very short timeline, resale homes will follow that trend as well in any of the communities. So our belief is that for the balance of this year, and we'll see what Anne Marie says here in a couple of weeks' time, but our belief is that from today, in the first few days of May, until the end of this year, we'll probably see about a minimum of another 3 and up to 5% increase in residential houses, residential resale prices for houses, not apartments, by the way, not condo apartments. That's at least 2 years away. And my personal projection or foresight is that next year we'll see another 5 to 7% increase over where they were. So basically from January 1st, 2022 until the end of the year, sometime in the latter part of December, when November, December, Q4, when interest rates are going to increase, we'll see prices capping off, and we're going to see another 5 to 7% growth next year. Anyways, that's John's Hazy Crystal Ball, cheating a lot with Benjamin Tal, Chief Economist of CIBC, his commentary, insights, me adding in my extra BS on top of it. Hopefully you got something out of this. Any questions you have, feel free to give us a call. We're more than pleased to discuss things with you. And anyways, bottom line, enjoy the weather outside. It's nice and sunny. Stay safe, get vaccinated, and let's enjoy ourselves. Cheers, guys.